Take a look at these massive concrete fortresses. They guzzle electricity and water, and they are rapidly appearing right next to rural towns and suburban neighborhoods, built at a scale that completely dwarfs the homes beside them. Communities are fighting back. In a single year, local opposition across the country stalled or blocked 48 of these data center projects, freezing over $156 billion in construction. The public is deeply skeptical of the technology these centers house. Polling shows only 16% of adults believe this tech rollout will have a positive impact over the next 2 decades. Under normal market conditions, supply follows demand. But here, citizens are actively protesting these facilities, yet the construction accelerates. The federal government and massive tech companies have engineered this expansion as a top-down project, overriding market demand through an active state-backed partnership. To bypass public consent, corporate executives and politicians rely on a specific narrative. They frame this technology rollout as an unavoidable international arms race. By labeling the industry as a national security imperative, tech leaders embed themselves directly into the state bureaucracy. They make their private investments look too strategic to fail, and the state has a clear vested interest in these tools. Federal agencies rely on these systems for extensive domestic surveillance and to execute mass deportation campaigns. The arms race narrative acts as an ideological smokescreen. It uses the fear of falling behind to override civil liberties and legitimize the dominance of a small handful of tech monopolies. On the ground, this alliance translates directly into dismantling environmental protections and slashing red tape to accelerate building permits. Feeding these massive data centers requires physically re-engineering the national electricity grid to handle staggering new power demands. To meet that demand, the government is forcing scheduled-to-retire coal, oil, and gas plants to stay running, keeping them online to feed this energy appetite. This chart shows the environmental cost of that grid manipulation. Since 2019, Google's emissions spiked by 50%. While tech gets energy abundance, working people absorb exhaust through rate hikes tracking right alongside corporate emissions. Federal policy deliberately shifts the health, ecological, and financial burdens away from corporations, placing them directly onto frontline communities and ratepayers. Building a nationwide network of data centers requires a staggering amount of capital, but these companies aren't relying on private innovation alone. The federal government heavily subsidizes the build-out with infrastructure tax breaks and corporate-friendly fiscal policies. This chart shows how those policies play out in reality. Just 3 companies, Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet, are projected to avoid $50 billion in federal taxes in 2025 alone. Combine those missing tax dollars with public subsidies for the electrical grid, and you have a direct, anti-democratic transfer of wealth from the public to private tech oligarchs. Economists use the term state capacity to describe the total resources and governing power a nation has available to execute massive infrastructure projects. State capacity is finite. Land, water, grid power, and tax dollars spent in one place cannot be spent in another. Directing $50 billion in tax breaks and billions more in grid upgrades toward data centers forces a zero-sum trade-off. This massive commitment of resources leaves the public ledger short on the funds and energy capacity needed for healthy schools, for regional transit, and green housing. The industry's marketing creates an air of inevitability, yet every substation and server farm represents a specific, reversible political choice made at the highest levels of government. If the government has the power to rapidly mobilize world-shaping infrastructure for billionaires, it possesses that exact same power to serve the public interest. Reclaiming that power requires clear, actionable steps: instituting data center moratoria, establishing public power authorities to manage the grid, and breaking up tech monopolies to re-democratize resource planning. Stopping the spread of antisocial infrastructure means stripping the power of world-making away from private corporations and returning it to working people.